Hey guys, thank you for joining me for Matthew 2. Before we jump into Matthew 2, I would like to do a quick recap of Matthew 1 and some of the takeaways that we got before jumping into Matthew 2. So, Matthew 1 was written by Matthew, a disciple of Christ, and the purpose for writing Matthew 1 was to document Jesus's lineage, his legal claim to the messianic throne, which was passed down person by person from David all the way down to Joseph, and it was just the proof of him where he falls in that line. Also, it was to say that God could use anybody because of how flawed the people that were in Jesus's line were. I mean, it goes from flawed to very, very, very awful people. And a huge takeaway we can get from this is that Jesus could use any, or God could use anybody to fulfill his plan, right? So this is to say that if we view ourselves as a flawed person, oh, how could God use me? He can, right? Because it's depicted that he can use anybody, right? So it's best not to fight him on that. Get in where you fit in, as they say. All right, so jumping into Matthew 2, I'm going to read a little quick blurb of it, and then just give you dang the oversight of, or the 10,000-foot view of key takeaways. So let's jump into it. Matthew 2, the visit of the wise men. Now, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, in the days of Herod the king, behold, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem, saying, where is he who has been born King of the Jews? For we saw his star when it rose, and have come to worship him. When Herod the king heard this, he was troubled, and all Jerusalem with him. And assembling all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Christ was to be born. They told him, in Bethlehem of Judea. For so it is written by the prophet, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah. For from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. All right, so let's jump into the important parts. It's first things first. We have to know about Herod. This guy is downright evil. This guy is not only evil, but insecure as well. He is a king that had a multitude of people killed. Pretty much anybody that threatened his throne, he had him killed. He killed multiple sons. He killed a wife. He killed a lot of people in his court. Anybody that rose to a certain level of power that he felt was a threat, he killed. Right. So this backstory helps understand why he takes the actions that he does later in this passage. In this part, it kind of depicts the Christmas story of the wise men traveling. In the Bible, it never specifies that there were only three of them, right? It's a well-known thing that at this time, traveling through Egypt, um, people traveled in large cohorts, or not cohorts. I'm blanking on the word, but people traveled in large groups to make this journey, right? Because it's dangerous. There's bandits, things of that nature, right? So the three thing, I don't know. This is one thing that I'd invite you to look up and try to find where it says three in the Bible. Came from the east to Jerusalem, where theologians believe that from the east represents areas like Persia. For we saw his star. Did This is just a theory of mine, but I want you to look into it. I believe that there's a bigger picture here. God's plan was always to incorporate the rest of the world in his saving grace. to not just let the Jewish people be the chosen people, but to incorporate Gentiles. Because in Matthew 1, you see the lineage of Jesus just point for point incorporating outsiders into that lineage. And then here we see that the first sign that points to the Messianic King is seen by outsiders to say, hey, we saw the sign, so we know you guys saw the sign. For we saw his star. It is important that we note that at the time it was supposed the Messianic King was supposed to be announced by a star in the prophecy, which is later covered. Right. So they saw a star like no other. They saw it when it rose, and they came to worship him. It's important to note that these wise men can be thought of as king builders. Now, to understand this, Herod, which is extremely insecure king, hears of the prophesied king that would immediately mean he would have to give up his throne, is confronted with these wise men saying, hey, we saw the star, we know you know where he's at. And he's like, the star, that's happening? Where is that? We need to go worship him, right? So we could see why he was troubled. One, because he never saw it. And then two, all of Jerusalem with him was troubled. They're like, star, he's here. Where? I don't see it, right? So this makes me believe that the star was not able to be seen by everyone, but just by a select few, which were to be the outsiders, the wise men, right? Very learned men, oftentimes studied astrology, right? So the prophecy there, and you, O Bethlehem, in the land of Judea, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who will shepherd my people Israel. So that is the prophecy that Jesus is fulfilling. Then Herod summoned the wise men secretly and ascertained from them what time the star had appeared. I wonder why. And he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, go and search diligently for the child. And when you have found him, bring me word, that I too may come and worship him. After listening to the king, they went on their way. And behold, the star that they had seen when it rose, went before them until it came to rest over the place where the child was. When they saw the star, they rejoiced exceedingly with great joy. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Then, opening their treasures, they offered him gifts, gold and frankincense and myrrh. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. So, things we'll notice in this story is the fact that King Herod approached these men secretly, right? Because this is the prophesied king that was supposed to take over for him. He's like, so when did you see the star appear? And he's writing it down to to pretty much guesstimate when how old this kid would be at this time. Why? We'll figure it out in a second. That I too may come and worship him. When I read this, I immediately thought of Scar. Um saying like, oh yeah, like, yeah, I'm gonna be right there. Whole time he's planning on more, he's plotting to kill him. The star that they had seen when it rose went before them, right? So this also points me to believe that it's not just a star in the sky, but an angelic being, right? Which was oftentimes represented as a bright light, which could be a star to some. And you'll see why I believe that bright light is the angel in a second. When it rose, went before them. So the star is moving. and then it came to rest. So the star just stopped right above the house, or the dwelling of Jesus. In the Christmas story, Jesus is depicted as a baby in a manger, but here in the in the biblical story, we could see that Jesus was clearly a child at this time. He wasn't a baby anymore. And going into the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they fell down and worshiped him. Right? This is an acknowledgement of who he is as a king, right? That he's deserving of reverence, respect. It's an acknowledgement of glory and majesty. Then opening their treasures, this is pretty much like at the time when wise men visited kings, it was often appropriate to bring gifts to that king. So they take out what they have, which is gold, frankincense, and myrrh, which just turns out to be a perfect representation of who Jesus is and what he is, or who he is to God's people. Right. First off, gold is the metal of kings. Second, frankincense was used in the temples when it was time to worship God. And then third, myrrh is a burial fluid that is meant to be used for embalming of the dead. So if we take these three things, we see clearly who Jesus is to be. Gold, a king, right? Worthy of respect. Frankincense, right? A god worthy of worship. And myrrh, the sacrificial lamb who was to die for the sins of many, for all of us, right? So that was extremely beautiful when that was pointed out to me. Moving on though, and being warned in a dream, right? Could it be that these outsiders, these wise men, could not figure out that this light, this warning was an angel because they were outside of God's people at the time? Or was it that they were only supposed to know what they were supposed to know and move on just that? I just want to say this happens so many times to pretty much all of us, where we have a certain amount of information and we move on that information and it's correct, and then we have a revelation looking back on it saying, oh man, like that actually played out perfectly as it was supposed to. There's so many times in my life where I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, like at the time I was just taking the next step that was right in front of me, but looking back, I saw so many things that I avoided, so many things that just lined up perfectly in my life to lead me to where I am today and what my life is today. And being warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they departed to their own country by another way. So the wise men are warned in a dream. Doesn't say by who, but if we read just a little bit further, now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt and remained there until the death of Herod. This was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet, out of Egypt I called my son. So, first point being that when Joseph was warned in a dream, it was by an angel. When the wise men were warned in a dream, it doesn't specify. I just thought that was cool, just tracking that whole thing. So, the next point I want to point out is the fact that Egypt is known as a place of refuge. It was a place of refuge for Israelites when they were fleeing from Egypt. Joseph took his family and fled to Egypt. I do want to point out the fact that their passage to Egypt, right, and back from Egypt, Could have been a very expensive journey to pick up your whole family and all of your things and move. Putting it together that Joseph just got a whole bunch of expensive things, gold being one of them, now had the funds to travel as he wished to for safety. So could this be God providing for his people, for his son? And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt. All right, so after being warned by an angel, he scooped his whole family up and left. This points out Joseph's willingness to listen to God's calling through this angel. And we all have to be that responsive and that willing to follow direction. Right. This is the meekness that God is searching for in the life of his believers, right? To be willing to submit yourself to God and what he has for your life. Out of Egypt, I called my son is a reflection of Hosea 11:1. All right, to prove my point, Herod kills the children. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise men, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in that region who were 2 years old or under, according to the time that he had ascertained from the wise men. Then was fulfilled, then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. A voice was heard in Ramah weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. This is the point that I was getting at earlier. Herod was a very insecure, evil king that would murder. It is thought to be by different theologians anywhere between the number of 30 kids to 1,000 or thousands. In 18, this is a personification of Judah being given the name Rachel and just being visualized as a woman weeping for her children because this is a whole people group that pretty much had their kids wiped out 2 years or younger by the evil King Herod. The return to Nazareth. But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt, saying, Rise, take the child and his mother and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead. And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. And he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. All right, last few points that I want to point out before closing out is for those who sought the child's life are dead is a call back to Exodus 4:19, which says, Go back to Egypt, for all the men who were seeking your life are now dead, which is to prove that this is just another prophecy being fulfilled. And there's a multitude of prophecies being fulfilled. This is one of the purposes of Matthew writing the book Matthew, is that Jesus was the messianic king that fulfilled all prophecy. So throughout this scripture and throughout the rest of Matthew, we'll be able to pinpoint and say, hey, this is just more scripture to prove that, hey, this is the guy. Jesus is the fulfillment of the prophecy. And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there, and being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. These are awesome pieces that prove the validity of the Bible versus scriptures that are compared to the Bible that there is debate on whether they are worth including as a biblical text or extra biblical text. It is things of this nature. Shout out to Wes Huff that pointed this out. It is the little telltale signs that say like, hey, this is not only biblically accurate but historically accurate. This is Archelaus, the son of Herod, right? This is juniper trees being in this region. It all just points to the fact that there was an actual person taking historical records of what is going on there, and it's like just pointing to little side facts that corroborate the story that's being told here historically. Yeah, there's a lot more information in there. Please do your own research on it. Put what you think was worth noting in the comments that I didn't. And I'm kind of changing the way we do the breakdowns. If you want to do a breakdown and have a conversation with me, please shoot me a text, shoot me an email, call me, and I'd love to break this down with you. I am doing this for my family so that we have a box to start on level 2 and not just cover level 1 again repeatedly. So watch this, read it for yourself, take your own notes, and then let's collaborate and gain a deeper understanding together. Thank you for sitting through this with me and breaking it down. Please let me know what you thought in the comment section below. And I'll do the wrap up or key takeaways of Matthew 2 when we break down Matthew 3. I look forward to chopping Matthew 3 up soon with you guys. Thank you for joining. Have a blessed night.